"I wish Daniel was here with us instead of up in that snow somewheres," murmured Sally. "Oh, Johnny, I can't feel easy about James. He's so Injun." "Funny thing is," said Jonathan carefully, "we still look alike, him and me, same as when we was little fellers. Remember that picture?" "Why, Johnny Keith, James don't any more look like that picture, or you, than I know. He wears braids and he's changed all right." Jonathan thought of the lean, wild grace of Jim's body, the eagle feather aslant above his scar-licked face. Still and all, Mr. Rutledge said he suspicioned who Jim was, minute he pulled that letter out, 'cause we resembled. "Well, I can't see it," declared Sally, "and I don't want to see it. What's more, he's a savage. Eats dog meat, wipes his knife on his shirt, can't even read." "Lots of folks can't read, sis." Jonathan got up wearily, pulling the thongs tight over the remaining pemmican. "What made him defend Jim? Everything she said was true. More than true. The way he threw that knife. And then there was the matter of that heathen little buckskin bundle Johnny'd spotted tied to Jim's braid the first night he'd come. Johnny knew what it was. He hoped Sally didn't. She'd disowned Jim completely. But then she didn't remember the Jim he'd known when they were children together, and had been lonesome for him all these years, and wanting him back. He shook off the mood irritably. "Best we worry about Jim later. Right now we got plenty on our hands just staying alive." Before the murky dawn had given way to bleak daylight, they were casting off. The wind seemed to be falling off a little. "Of course," thought Jonathan grimly, "since we got rapids ahead." Half their fight had been against that wind, which seemed obstinately set on keeping them in the same place. One day they'd made scarcely a mile in 8 long hours. But let the water grow white with hidden obstacles, let rapids and whirlpools loom up in their path, and the wind was sure to vanish, leaving them to race headlong over the swift current, fighting to control the raft's progress by thrusting with their poles at the rocks that jutted out of the swirling water like barred fangs. With the next smooth stretch, back would come the wind, and they'd be fighting just as hard to keep moving at all. Since the first day, all of them had ceased to think of the river as a mere body of water, rushing through natural causes to the sea. It was a monster, intent on their destruction, roaring with fury at at their presence in its black-walled gorge, calling the rain to drench them, and the snow to blind them, and the wind to madden them, and the rapids to drown them. Every mile negotiated, every obstacle dodged, was a cheating of the giant. Along toward noon, Ned Rutledge, stationed at the foremost corner at the raft, swung around a bend, let out a shout of alarm. "Watch it, Pa! This side! This side!" Through the veil of rain, Jonathan saw Rutledge splash across the pitching logs, sending up fans of water with every step. At the same moment he glimpsed on his own side a dark shape looming under the surface just ahead. As the raft jarred against whatever obstacle Ned had sighted, both Rutledges thrust hard, causing the whole clumsy craft to swing in a semicircle. "Take it easy," yelled Jonathan. He aimed his pole toward the looming shape ahead and braced himself. An instant later there was a grinding jolt that seemed to tear his arm from its socket. The logs under his feet tilted perilously, then bounded free, drenching him with icy spray. Before he had time to do more than catch his breath, the raft was careening forward again, leaping like a live thing, smacking down on the black running current with bone-jarring force. From the Rutledge's wagon top, under which the four women huddled through the long chilling hours, he heard the familiar sound of Maggie's cheering. In spite of his throbbing arm, he grinned. "You didn't get us that time," he told the giant. "Hungry?" Sally shouted in his ear a few moments later. He nodded without turning as the raft skimmed dangerously close to a jumble of wagon bows, soaked canvas, and logs, ruined goods, the wreckage of just such a craft as their own. "Lord Almighty," he grated, feeling his flesh crawl as they swept past. "There's one didn't make it." Chapter 7. A couple of days later, Jim and Daniel scrambled down the steep embankment to the same rocky little beach, driving before them the skinny cattle who lowed dispiritedly as they faced the churning river. They could be driven no further on this side. The mountains were impassable. An immigrant raft appeared around a bend, the men fighting wind, rocks, and hidden obstacles like demons. Had Johnny's raft passed yet? Both Jim and Daniel shouted questions as the vessel whirled by, but the wind tore their words to shreds. "What'll we do?" yelled Daniel finally over the thunder of the water. "Stock can't ford this." To ford water means to cross it. Jim shook his head. Nothing could ford this, certainly not these half-starved animals. They would have to ferry the beasts across somehow or other, and it would cost them days of delay. The pemmican was already ominously low. "Jim?" He looked down into Daniel's anxious face. "I'll get you there," he repeated stubbornly. "Go get the hatchet out of my possibles. We're going to build another raft." It was 3 days before the last terrified animal was across the river. Mud-coated and exhausted, Jim and Daniel slept among the tumbled boulders, and the next morning strained upward again into the teeth of fresh snow. The trail on this side was rougher, steeper, and more strewn with pitfalls than the other one they had already come over. If that were possible. Only the dwindling food supply enabled Jim to distinguish one day from the next, as they struggled through a white and swirling world where they could see ahead only a few feet at a time, where the gusty wind drove the snowflakes into their sleeves and down their necks, stung tears into their eyes, and then froze them on their lashes. Every branch, every twig was laden and bent with snow, and the stumbling animals wore inch-thick caps and cloaks of white. But what worried Jim was the increasing weakness of himself and the boy. He had dared take no more than a few mouthfuls of food for several days now, and had cut even Daniel's rations by half. Surely they would reach the Cascades tomorrow or the next day. How long could 50 miles be? But still the trail led on. Still the snow fell from the dirty sky. At last one evening, as they halted for the night in a rough little clearing, Jim dug into his pouch to find only one small morsel of the pemmican left. His eyes went to Rutledge's half-starved little heifer, then away again. It outraged his pride to have to kill for food one of the very animals he had contracted to deliver safely. Automatically, he set about making camp, but there was a slow drowsiness about his motions. The air was deathly still this evening, and so cold his nostrils stuck together when he breathed. His fingers felt like wood, his feet like stumps. Clumsily, he dug a rude cave out of the side of a snowbank and motioned Daniel into it. The boy was groggy with fatigue and hunger. Well, from now on, it would have to be the moccasin soles or that scrawny heifer, or nothing. As Jim turned to pull Daniel buffalo hide or buffalo robe from his pack, the landscape seemed to lurch as he staggered, and the boy's voice, murmuring something about roast buffalo ribs, faded to a great distance. By Gore, thought Jim, maybe I best start on them moccasins tonight. But he leaned against Bad Medicine's bony side for a moment, swallowing hard, and the lightheadedness passed. He tugged the robe free and flung it to Daniel, then tossed the last chunk of pemmican on top of it, a chunk no bigger than his thumb. "Ain't you eatin'?" asked Daniel sharply. "Not tonight." "Didn't eat last night neither," Daniel said. "Don't matter. I'm used to going empty." "For 2 and 3 days in a row? You're lying." "Shut up and eat your own," Jim growled. It was a momentous task to drag down his own robe off Buckskin, to loosen her pack, to make his fingers move, and to lift his arms. Daniel had become very still. "Jim," he faltered, "are we running out of food?" "We got plenty." "You're lying, Jim Keith." Daniel's voice rose weak but shrill. "It's getting low, and you've been starving yourself so you can give it to me." Jim turned on him. "Forget it. Forget that and eat. I said I'd get you there, didn't I?" An expression of stubbornness settled over Daniel's snub-nosed face. "Not going to eat unless you do." "By Gore, you eat that or I'll lay into you." "Go ahead. I still won't." Daniel lay back, his fist tight about the scrap of pemmican, tears of weakness and protest spilling over. Panic touched Jim. He dropped to his knees beside the boy. Why won't you? I just won't. I can't. Cracky, Jim. You wouldn't. We're brothers. Slowly, Jim sank back on his heels. Yeah, brothers, he murmured. After a long, still moment, he reached for Daniel's chunk of pemmican and meticulously divided into equal parts. It was then that Moki struggled into view through breast-deep snow. From his mouth dangled the limp carcass of some small animal. Wait, Daniel, don't eat yet. Jim pushed both scraps of pemmican into the boy's hand. Moki, here. The dog growled deep in his throat. Moki, snarled Jim. The sight of the fresh, dark blood on the snow turned him savage with hunger. He rose slowly, letting the robe fall and stepping past the wide-eyed Daniel. Moki retreated, his growls unmistakably hostile. His lifted lip revealing a row of wolfish, sharp white teeth. Jim forced himself to halt. The dog stopped too. Slowly, Jim dragged his eyes away from the meat and turned aside. It took all his will. He stood there fighting to keep his head, waiting until he felt Moki's tenseness relax and heard the growls die away. At the soft sound of slavering, he looked around. The dog's attention was now on the meat, which he was tearing as he held it with a forepaw. It stained the snow around it a vivid red. Jim gathered his tired muscles. Soundlessly, with infinite caution, he began to approach. One foot was lifted with snow, elaborate care put down soundlessly after a long tense wait, and the other. His jaws ached from clenching, and craving blurred his vision until the covered meat seemed to dance crazily. But each step brought him nearer, and Moki did not know yet. When he was still 3 paces from the dog, he got a whiff of blood. It sent saliva flooding into his mouth, cracked his patience. He sprang. He heard Moki's yelp, felt a bright flash of pain as he seized the meat. The dog's jaws closed on his hand. Under him, the hairy steel muscle body thrashed and clawed as they struggled together, filling the air with snow. Moki's savage snarls mingled with his own no less savage cursing. Gradually he became aware that he was doing all he could, and it was not enough. The dog was stronger than he. For lack of the smallest margin of strength, he would have to watch his own dog eat while he starved. Fury sent strength to him from somewhere. That last spurt needed to force aside those flailing paws and sink his own teeth into Moki's ear. Hair filled his mouth. He bit down with all its strength, at the same time twisting his captured hand until the dog's head was forced into an unendurable angle. At last the trap-like jaws snapped open, freeing him and the meat he still clenched. He rolled clear and staggered to his feet, sending Moki sprawling with a cuff as he did so. As the dog tumbled away yelping, Jim grabbed for the branch of a low pine and clung there. He was encrusted with snow, his knees sagging under him, his lungs ached. The struggle had all but finished him, but strength itself he held now in his torn hand. Meat. Jim, you're bleeding, quavered Daniel. Jim lifted his hand. The wound was a nasty one. It don't matter. Don't be scared. Daniel, I'll fix it. He stumbled back through the trampled snow to the dugout, pausing to gasp a last insult. Squaw! Over his shoulder at Moki. Then he fell down beside Daniel to examine his prize. It was far from choice, a small and considerably chewed-up mink, its wet fur already freezing into stiff little points. But it was meat. He skinned it raggedly, his knife made unskilled by the trembling of his hands. Returning the 2 morsels of pemmican to his pouch, he gave Daniel a haunch of the mink and hacked off the other for himself. Chewing it ravenously, he felt warmth and life flow back into him. They'd get there now, heifer and all, with any luck. By the time he had cracked the cleaned bone and sucked out the marrow, the scenery had stopped dancing and blurring before his eyes. Trees and snow-capped rocks were firmly anchored to the ground again.